By the way, Bob, stop talking so people won't be mad.
Okay. We started recording. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and immediately move into our minutes. So does anybody have any issues with the minutes? Or if not, I would accept the motion.
Kevin, may I take roll call?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. With Bob being off and gallivanting in Mexico and elsewhere, I just figured we didn't want to take his roll call. So.
Hey, I'm here.
Start with Sharon,
Here.
David Anderson,
Here.
Bill. Is Bill on the call?
Here.
I see.
Thank
There you
you.
are. Yeah.
Janet,
Here.
Kyle.
Kyle will be absent today.
Right,
Okay,
he's traveling. Yeah.
thank you. David Delendorf,
Present. Present.
Paul Dossett,
Here.
Jane,
Here.
Patty,
Here.
Tony,
Present.
Richard,
Here.
Liz,
Present.
Robert,
Go.
Kevin,
Aki.
Olivia,
Here.
Maureen,
Here.
Anne Marie,
Here.
and Tom Starr.
Here.
I think our only absence is Kyle. Am I correct?
Like it.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So with that, we will move into the minutes. And I would ask if anybody has any issues or questions or changes for the minutes. Okay.
I actually read them and I move that we adopt them.
I second the motion.
Okay, so moved by Bob and seconded by Patty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are adopted. All right, so we blocked out quite a bit of space today to start hearing from our county elected officials. And unless Maureen or Olivia tell me otherwise, I think we were unsuccessful in securing anybody to present to us at today's meeting. I am not going to blame the officials as much as ourselves. We only gave them, a week or so notice. But we will be bringing people on as of next week. Somebody suggested to me that, and actually I jokingly sent this to Catherine too, maybe if they don't want to present to us, that's a sign we should, never, I'm just not even going to finish that statement. Anyway, but I love this because it does bring us to one of the last items on our agenda, which is, finishing a little sooner than we have been. So my hope is that going forward, we will have at least one, not just elected official, but presenter at each one of our meetings. And for me, and I talked to with one of the other committees today about this too, that there's several elected officials we're going to want to hear from. Particularly, we have an active discussion going on about should we merge positions like the treasurer and the assessor, for instance. Should the auditor or the manager be elected versus appointed? Those sorts of things, right? And so we need to hear from each of those people and really hear what they think of their position, what their opinions are on these different issues and so on. And I think it's going to be really important and informative for our conversation. The other thing though, is we also have department heads. And I see that, Mylene, and thank you. We also have department heads who aren't an independently elected official, but are someone who runs a department. So for instance, the planning and development department, should we hear from that person? Should we hear from the director of public works? And my feeling is yes. And so I'm reaching out to those folks so that we can hear about those individual departments within the organization, within the county government. When I say organization, Mylene has just put in chat, she is here. And we did hear an excellent presentation from Mylene with regard to the county budget. We did not hear from Mylene regarding her position as county auditor though. And so what I would like to do is actually turn it over to Mylene and go ahead and let Mylene present to us regarding her position, unless anybody has any issue with that. But I think that would be an excellent use of our time for the next half hour or so. And then we can have some Q&A with Mylene. So Mylene, thank you for being here. Thank you for attending almost every one of our meetings so far, by the way. Appreciate your interest in our work. But yeah, let's take this opportunity and go ahead and have you present to us regarding the position of the auditor, the elected position of the auditor. And thank you again for the budget presentation you gave last time.
Welcome. I should preface this by saying I'm going to use a presentation I prepared for the new council. Since it's not a good time to be leading them around the offices and showing them everything, each of the departments was asked to prepare a presentation, which was given via virtual meeting about the offices. And so I'm going to base my discussion on that because it will keep me somewhat organized. My caveat is that when I did that to the council, I was trying to give them a flavor of the department, the personality of the department, in addition to the tasks of the department. So it's probably not quite what I would have prepared for you, but I think it'll do.
Mylene, the fact that you're here and you have a presentation is fantastic. I should have talked to you before this and just said, yes, Mylene will be presenting to us today.
Almost offended that you didn't ask, but almost. So let me pull this up and I will start sharing my screen. Okay. Which I know is possible, but okay, how do I do that? I'm more used to Teams.
I'm sorry.
Share screen, how do I do that?
You should be able to go down to share screen, and as long as you
There
can,
it is, right in the middle, the green one, of course. Okay.
Something.
all right, we can see
All right,
it.
are we here?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, again, not quite the presentation I would have put together for the CRC, but we'll make it work. This is my department. There are 13 people in the auditor's office divided into 4 divisions, 4 tasks in 3 divisions. This is the last time we were all together, and I use the word all loosely. That's me on the phone. I was in Los Angeles for the birth of a baby at the time. So at the circle there, that's me. Okay, so we have a lot of fun. We have parties. We like dogs. There are 4 dogs that in the 13 people in the department, 4 of them bring dogs to the office. So you can tell we're cool people. This is the org chart of the office. The chief deputy auditor is the supervisor, if you will, over the finance division, which here is divided into the brown, blue, and light blue groups, in addition to customer service. And then elections over here in green reports directly to the auditor. And I'll speak more about each of those divisions shortly. The 4 primary duties of the office are recording, licensing, finance, and elections. And I will talk about each of those individually. 2 of the clowns in my office there. Okay, customer service is the division which has recording and licensing. Many of you would know Orrin if you live on San Juan Island, because he used to have the rumor mill, and before that, the French Street
Ale
House.
House.
Yeah, where we used to play trivia.
Yep.
Okay, recording. Recording is something that a lot of people don't know about, but I'm sure most of you do. It is recording real property and other sorts of documents. Really, any document that somebody wants to be record, they can record, and it makes them a permanent record. We have an online search utility, which works pretty well. It does go down sometimes, and when it does, that's how we know it has a lot of users, because we start hearing from them immediately. So if you want to look up a a deed, a reconveyance, a lien. You can do that. There's various ways to search. Name is the way most people look. They're often most curious to see what's there with their name on it. Recording fees. This is not terribly important for you, but the base recording fee for recording a document is now $103.50. The part that goes to the county is $6.89. Most of it is for affordable housing. This is how the state decided some time ago that it was going to fund most affordable housing activities. Part of that goes to the state, a part to the county. And so there's some small nexus between recording land deeds and affordable housing, but that's the way most affordable housing programs are funded within the state. We added at the end of 2017, and we're so grateful and now that we did, something called e-recording, which is how a way that lawyers, escrow companies, title companies can record documents without using paper. They submit it electronically. It's not as simple as it sounds. It has to go through a submitter who prepares the document for submission. It has to be formatted to go into the different recording programs that are used across the state. And the submitter also takes the payment and remits it to the county. The county doesn't pay anything for that fee, but the submitter does. And as you can imagine, it started kind of slow. And then in 2020, of course, the numbers reversed because suddenly everything was being done virtually. So companies that had not been using e-recording started doing so. We do marriage licenses, and people think that's licensing, but actually that's part of recording because it goes through our recording system. I like to say that marriage license revenue is a tiny barometer of the economy. It went way down after the last recession, and it went way down last year too. I don't think it was the economy so much as people didn't want to get married without an audience. I'm hopeful that we'll start seeing more marriages later this year. Dog licensing also goes through the recording system. We have a small self-supporting fund for dog licenses. It pays the cost of the program, and the rest of the money, about 85% of it, is paid to local animal protection societies. I'm hoping I have the final version of this because I had two versions going and got them mixed up at one point. Okay, let's talk about licensing. This is the second of the 4 main tasks of the auditor's office. The auditor is the state's agent for vehicle and vessel licensing. Vehicle and vessels, that's pretty simple. Everybody knows you have to renew your tabs every year and get new titles when you sell a car. There are so many combinations of permutations of these transactions. It is mind-boggling. One of the services we added in 2018 was quick titles, so people could, you know how it takes 4 to 6 weeks typically after you buy a car, or transfer a car, to get a title. For $50, you can get it if you qualify the same day. Didn't do a lot of that last year because nobody was coming into the office. There was a fee change in 2019, which resulted in more funding to the county. Typically, licensing is not an area where the county makes money. It is a service we provide. There has actually in past years been discussion of possibly eliminating it in San Juan County and some other smaller counties. And of course, the counties go berserk because even though it's a small thing, it's such a huge service to our residents that we would not want to get rid of it. Even when we weren't making money on it, they paid most of our cost of reimbursed most of our costs. Now we're making a little bit of money at it. A little bit being like $93,000 in 2020. I don't think you need details of numbers, but if anybody sees numbers they want to ask me about, go ahead. Okay, so recording and licensing, that's our first two tasks. They are a division, recording and licensing. We think of them together, and they They are the, what was I thinking here? I don't know, completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, we think of, oh, that's our customer service division. So the customer interface changed a lot last year, understandably. We shut down completely for, I don't know, a month or more, maybe 2 months. No, it looks like it was about a month. So mid-April, we reopened by appointment only. And then starting November 2nd, we've been open for walk-in traffic. One of the good things to come out of this is I think more people have realized how much they can do online. And of course, online transactions tend to be more efficient. The only problem is there's been a huge learning curve, and we have literally had one of our 3 people in this area assigned completely to the phone the entire time because the phone calls just increased exponentially. All of my recording and licensing staff are cross-trained and do both services. Okay, now our finance group. Another outcome I'll just mention, since you see Camelia here, another outcome of this year of COVID is challenges to families with children. And we do have an accountant who has a 6-year-old daughter whose daycare situation fell apart, and her schooling situation fell apart. And so she works at home sometimes, which has been wonderful. The CARES Act gave us funding to give everybody in the finance area a computer so they could work at home if needed. She works at home at times, and at times she brings her daughter to work. Her daughter is a delight and charming and sweet and quiet, and so she is not a problem at all. We refer to her as the office intern. So let's talk about finance. Finance is our largest division. It's about 60% of the department's work. Among the duties that we do, financial reporting. Since I don't have more detail on most of these categories, I'll just talk about them as I go along. Financial reporting, the big one is, of course, the annual report. This department is responsible for preparing the annual report to the state auditor's office. In addition, we do quarterly reports to council and assist the other districts and the other departments with all kinds of reporting. We also are in charge of budget preparation. I talked about that last year. Is a team effort where we involve, we have a budget team which crosses departments that puts together the budget, but the coordination, the physical, electronic assembling of the budget happens in this office. Accounts payable, we pay the bills for the county. Every year when the tax bills come out and people complain to me about it, I said, don't talk to me, the treasurer takes your money, I spend it. So that is what I referred to by accounts payable. The payroll, okay, we do payroll and obviously for the county, we also do payroll for most of the junior taxing districts in the county. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the people who do that. Grants administration. A few years ago, I was able to get council to add a grants administrator position. This is a huge job. This county, as most counties, relies a lot on grants for funding the operations. This past year, more than ever, of course, with all the CARES and FEMA and other types of funding that came in because of COVID. Tracking those, keeping the right kind of records, reporting them correctly is a huge task. I'd like to remind people that grants are not free. It's not free money, which is why the federal grants, generally you're able to assess a federal indirect charge on it, which ours runs about 20%. We have to calculate a plan every year. In fact, that's what I'm working on right now. That is to compensate for the county for the huge overhead involved with grants. Fixed asset tracking. I mentioned I was talking to the veterans group recently, and they are buying, this is an unusual thing for them, but they've decided to buy a generator and use it at the home of one of their veterans. And the understanding is it will belong to the Veterans Advisory Board, not to the veterans, so that if he no longer leads it later, they will be able to perhaps deploy it at another home. Well, when I heard that, because I go to most of their meetings too, I said, well, of course, the board can't own it. The county owns it. And because it's a county asset, now we're going to have to track it. Just like we track all of our computers, all of our rolling stock. So all of that tracking is in this office as well. Junior districts, which is a rather informal term really for other taxing districts within the county. And not all of them are even taxing districts. The school districts are taxing districts, but we don't do as much for them as we do for most of the other districts. The ports, the water districts, I'm not going to be able to think of all of them now. Let me see, I've got a list up here. Let's see, sewer, cemetery, water, ports, I don't know. Anyway, all these other districts in the county, even though they are distinct entities from the county, they have their own EIN. They have their own DUNS number. If they apply for grants, it's as in themselves, not as the county. And yet the county has a special relationship with them because statutorily, the treasurer is not only the county's treasurer, she is also the treasurer for all of these junior taxing districts. There are a few exceptions for certain types of districts where they can have their own treasurer, but most of them currently, well, most have to, and most of those who don't have to also use the treasurer as their treasurer. In addition, the auditor has certain responsibilities. We have to cut their checks. We do not have to do their full accounting. We do not have to do their payroll calculation and tracking, but we do those things. And because we do, I go through a formula every year to calculate the cost, but they compensate the county for the non-mandated services. Many counties have stopped providing services to the other districts. But in this small county with some really tiny districts, they rely heavily on the experience and the expertise that is available to them in the county. And we are happy to be able to provide that to them. So that is a person's worth of job right there. Actually, a little bit more than a person. Anyway, we also do buy some office supplies centrally, and we're in charge of the financial system. Let's see a little bit more. Our payroll pod, which is Michelle, the payroll manager, and Robin, the payroll deputy. They do payroll, W-2s, 1095s, the payroll portions of the annual report. The payroll deputy also does the junior district AP as well as the junior district payroll. And just a note that all of these individual work groups all help each other constantly. It is, you know, we go where the need is. The budget, the senior budget analyst, which is a new position, Tara Anderson, will be in charge of preparing the budget and budget reports. Historically, I have done that. She actually works from the Orcas Landing. This might be of interest to some of you from other islands. One of the ways we are trying to attract and keep good employees from other islands is to provide them the opportunity to work on their home island if possible. Tara works most of the time, I would say more than 80% of the time at the Orcas Landing. She comes over here when she needs to. She also last year served on the EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center, that's the group that ran the county's COVID response. Tara served as the admin finance section chief, which honestly was a really tough thing for this department because it took 75% of her time, sometimes more. But we survived, and there's her dog Lucy, who keeps the otters at bay, literally, in Marcus Landing. Also in finance, the grants administrator, currently Libby Concord, talked about what they do. She helps the departments with the applications, management, sourcing, and reporting. Normally prepares the federal and direct rate plan, but she's new in the position, so I'm preparing it this year, and she'll take over next year. Our GL and payables people round out the finance group. The GL accountant, I like to describe that position as maintaining the structure of the financial system, which means she maintains the BARS code, the chart of accounts. She has primary responsible for the annual report. She creates projects. So she does journal entries. She does the structural accounting stuff. Then our payables deputy, Megan, does the, in addition to payables, does credit cards, fixed assets, and office supplies. Elections. I love elections. Elections I have always described as 20% of my work and 80% of my headache. Here's Amy at the standing desk, which was purchased with one of our grants last year, a private grant. It was a really tough year in elections, extraordinary interest in the election on top of the coronavirus crisis. People were very excited, and we've had unprecedented logistical issues, anxiety. I have to say that these two people work for me, Camelin. You know, in what I'm seeing, the pictures of you guys is over Camelin's pictures. I don't know if that's blocking it for you too, but anyway, Camelin's a rock star. Amy's a rock star. Neither one of them had any problems managing the year, but it was a really tough year. Some of the things that happened last year in elections that are notable, the presidential primary was moved up last year. You may remember it used to be in May for Washington at the suggestion of the Secretary of State, and with the legislative action, it was moved to an earlier date, March 10th. The goal of the move was to increase participation in it and also to increase Washington's significance on the national stage. We think that happened. The turnout was certainly much higher, statewide 50 versus 35% in 2016. San Juan County was 65 versus 51%. But I think a lot of that was also due to, again, extraordinary interest in the presidential election. So San Juan County usually is one of the highest turnouts in the presidential election. It had the highest turnout in 2016 and second highest in 2020. So we have an educated, involved electorate, and they vote. And then COVID hit after March 10th. So the rest of the year was a challenge, largely because of the logistical challenges. The April election was canceled by the jurisdictions who were supposed to be involved in it because they were concerned about both staff safety and whether voters would turn up. Because that was early in the days, people still weren't sure how to react, what they needed to do, how unsafe it was. We do not have the option, elections does not have the option of closing the doors, and so it was never closed. Fortunately, we benefited from supplies donated by a group called Business for America. The CARES grant provided funds to buy other supplies that we needed. We did work with smaller groups. This picture here is about a group of two. You can see they're sitting actually kind of far apart. They usually sit like chummy right next to each other, but we made accommodations, spread people out a little bit more, and worked with smaller, well, same size teams, but fewer teams for safety. A lot of grants last year, which enabled us to get some things we would not have done otherwise, like new ballot boxes, an HVAC system, all the supplies that we needed. Actually got a generator for the elections office because it would be really bad if the elections office lost power on election day. And a small private grant enabled us also to get some furniture that we desperately needed. I got a great team. They did a great job last year, as always. I'd like to point out a few things that we, oh, this is, you don't need this. This is just my saying, my chief deputy is fabulous. I hired this young woman in January, and then the world fell apart. I actually worked at home for a couple times early in the year because I'm old, and she was in the office. I worked at home at the end of the year because of this baby situation, and she was in the office. She's been great, but that's not some of the things we learned. It's better to express fears and concerns and keep them to yourself. Animals and kids are great. I'll show you some pictures that prove this, but Amy fits inside our new ballot boxes. Greg Sawyer, our facilities manager, does not. We got a lot of support from our community. But my big takeaway for the year is it is safer to work at home, but it is healthier to work together. And those of us who did work for a while at home, when we all came back in the office, it was really a lot better work environment. And even though we work in pretty close quarters, we've been healthy and done well. So there's some more pictures. Here's Amy inside a ballot box. And where the picture is behind, for me, it's behind the pictures of you guys, but there's Greg Sawyer not fitting in a ballot box. So that is fairly quick. And like I said, it wasn't actually intended to go into an in-depth description of what we do, but I would invite you to ask questions if you have any.
Mylene, I want to thank you. I wish I had reached out to you instead of the half a dozen others I reached out to. This was an excellent presentation, and just thank you for being here already, and thank you for the presentation. We'll open it up. Mylene, do you want to stop sharing and then I can see folks?
I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Let's open it up for questions from the commission. Any questions for Mylene?
I have a
Anyone?
question.
Yeah, please, David Dellendorf. And then
Mylene, thank you for attending again and again. I noticed there was nothing in there about the receipt of funds, and I know the treasurer's office and the assessor's office work on the income side, you know, the collecting taxes, basically. Is there a statutory requirement that the treasurer who collects funds must be separate from the auditors and the accounting and finance area who disperses funds? Is that the reason why they're separated, or is there some other practical reason? Or
That's a really good question, David. And I think for the reason for that, you have to go back in history to when small counties like us had one treasurer and one auditor. Okay, they didn't have these large staffs. And yes, you would not want the same person receiving and reconciling your funds who is writing the checks. And that is why statutorily they are separate offices. The treasurer does receive all the funds and manages the investments. Is that necessary now? No, so long as you have adequate separations of duty in place. I mean, even within our department, we have funds, smaller funds, small checking accounts, I'll call them, which we call revolving funds, that don't go through the treasurer's office. For example, a COBRA account for employees who have left and are paying COBRA for their medical. That check is managed by the payroll deputy. Well, she doesn't also reconcile it. It's reconciled by the GL account. So you manage conflicts by segregation of duty. And that could be done if those offices were the same.
You referred to a statutory requirement. Is it under state law? Can the treasurer's office or functions not be combined with the auditor's function? Did I
believe-
understand you?
No, I did not say that. I don't think I said
Okay.
that. I said, right now in statute, they are separate. I believe that a charter county could combine the offices if they wanted to, but you always have to, as a matter of internal control, segregate duties.
Thank you.
Okay,
Well-
Bob,
Mylene, looking at the three positions of auditor, assessor, and treasurer, if it became either necessary or a good idea to combine two of those offices, which two would you think would combine most successfully?
You
sorry
could
to-
combine, sorry.
I said, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's something I've been thinking about for 12 years, 14 years. Only, yeah, 14. You could combine treasurer and auditor, and there was a time when I advocated for that. It's not that I don't advocate for it now. I just, as I just described, there's no reason those duties could not be in one office so long as they have, segregation of duties in place, just as we have to have within the current office. However, you could also combine the treasurer with the assessor. The assessor works very close with the treasurer on property taxes. The assessor assesses the property, applies the levy rates, and then those levy rates are go into the treasurer's system for billing the property tax bills. So there is definitely a nexus there. They work very closely together on that. The auditor also works closely together with the treasurer on not just on finances, but on recorded documents. They do, I mentioned e-recording. The treasurer does e-read. That is, they can accept real estate excise tax payments electronically, and which then come over to us for e-recording. So we work closely with her on recording issues as well as on financial issues. If you look at the size of the departments, the auditor has 13 people. The treasurer, and this is including the elected in all cases. The treasurer has 4, and the assessor has, I think it's 11. I could be wrong, but I think it's 11. So, obviously the treasurer is the one you would move into one of the other departments.
Kevin, brief follow-up.
Yeah, please, go ahead, Bob.
Could you tell us, Mylene, whether if, let's say, for instance, the treasurer's office and the auditor's office were combined, one of the reasons for doing that would be, of course, budgetary. Would all of what is made up by combining them be eaten up by a need for more employees or any other such expenses that would make it not profitable for us to do that?
Possibly. I believe, I'm getting out on thin ice here when I talk about the operations of the treasurer's office. I'm not sure that you could just eliminate the treasurer's position without replacing her with somebody else who does some of the things that she does. All of these officers, all of these elected officials are working electeds. We don't just sit around and manage. We do real work. And so could the duties of the 4 people in the treasurer's office be combined into 3? Maybe. More likely you would hire a lower level person than the treasurer to pick up that slack in the treasurer's office. But honestly, and I mentioned to Kevin, I am on my way out. I'm in my last term, so nothing that you do is going to affect me. So I hope I can be completely neutral about this stuff. You would have to pay the remaining elected official more than you are paying them now in order to take on that additional duty. So, yeah.
Okay, I
Thank
saw,
you.
we're gonna go to Maureen and then Dick and then Anne Marie.
Thank you, Mylene. You're really amazing. I have two parts, two questions, actually, two separate ones. Well, this is a simple one. Auditor and treasurer are mandated titles in the Constitution, are they not? There has to be an auditor and a treasurer the language is in the state constitution.
I don't know that.
Maureen, I believe the county has to have those functions. I don't think you need to have a position. You need to have an auditing function and a treasuring function. But particularly under a charter government, you could eliminate the elected position as long as those functions are taken care of. And I see Bill nodding, so
wait.
I'm feeling better.
I have a second part to my question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. How much collaboration do you do with the county manager in preparing the budget?
Oh, a lot. And as I mentioned during my budget presentation, the county manager is the council's representative in the budget process, I believe is how it's described in the charter. So I would say that while this office does the nitty gritty, we confer a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mylene.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Mylene, to further put you on the spot, if you had to make the decision to combine two of those three offices, would you put the treasurer with the auditor or with the assessor, and why?
I would put the treasurer with the assessor, but I would take some of the treasurer's duties and give them to the auditor. For example, there's no reason that real estate excise tax has to be with the treasurer. It could be with the auditor, and it is in some counties.
Yeah, it is.
So if e-REIT and e-recording were combined, that would be amazing, much easier.
And why would you put the treasurer with the assessor?
Because I think that they work closely, really closely on the assessing and taxing parts of their jobs. And here's an example of that. They have a separate piece of software from our financial system. We have an ERP, enterprise resource planning. I've never understood why that means this kind of, anyway. We have our overall financial system is Eden, but the treasurer and the assessor have another piece of software called PAS, which is Property Assessment and Collection System. And only those two departments use it. And I think the fact that they use that software kind of symbolizes that they have a lot in common.
Okay, next we have Anne Marie.
Hi, Mylene. Thanks so much for your help tonight. I wanted to know why we wouldn't just combine all three of those departments into one.
Appraising property is a very distinct operation from the financial operations. Could you? Yes, absolutely. You could create a financial office and put all of them under one. What would you gain? I'm not sure. And the fact when I say that the appraising is very different is why sometimes I think, no, I'd combine the treasurer with the auditor, not with the assessor. But that's, I mean, even though they are a financial office, they are a financial office in the sense that they do the assessing that leads to our primary revenue source. They are not accountants.
Tony.
Eileen, thank you so much for being here. It's very informative. And Thank you. And in the subcommittees, there's discussion, and I haven't gone to any side of that discussion about having certain qualifications for elected officials. In your view, what qualification would you recommend or suggest for your position?
You kind of cut out at the end there, but I think you asked for my position for auditor.
Yeah, I mean, if it were to be a sentence where the person at the front counter at the elections office can say, "Oh yeah, you're qualified, you can file."
I would say there is absolutely no, there is nothing you could say that would suit as a prerequisite for the auditor's office. And the reason I say that is because of the 4 distinct and very different responsibilities of the office: recording, licensing, finance, and elections. What you see across the state in the auditors that exist and have existed is they come from different areas. Some come from elections. Some come from finance. Some come from recording or from the escrow or title field. And all of those qualify them for the job. The job is very diverse. You're not going to find anyone who has, well, you're unlikely to find someone who has experience in all of those unless they have worked in an auditor's office. If you try to put an educational requirement on it, I mean, you could say you have to have a college degree, but I know some very fine auditors who don't.
Thank you.
Liz?
Marlene, how much longer will you be in this position?
Give me a calendar.
Tomorrow.
1 year and 10 months. Actually, 3 days less than 10 months. Yes.
Okay. I was just thinking the commission might be able to, if you were leaving sooner, the commission might be able to benefit from your exit input. But you're around a lot longer than we will be.
Sure what
So.
you mean by that.
Pardon me?
I'm not sure what you mean by my exit input.
Well, if you were, completely stepped out of the position and then could, freely make recommendations to how, if your magic wand worked, what you would have us do. And maybe you don't feel any limitations right now. I could be wrong about that.
I'm pretty well known for speaking my mind.
I
And
have never known Marlene to be quiet.
I'm getting that. Yes.
because I am in my last term, I really have no qualms, and you are getting my full and honest input.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Dave Anderson?
Marlene, in the 4 areas of focus of your department, how much cross-training is there? Is there cross-training within the focuses, or do you have people working from payroll? Do you have them working in elections?
At times, yes. There's a lot of cross-training. Well, of course, recording and licensing are completely cross-trained, but we have used people in those areas regularly, not this past year on account of everything, but in elections to fill out our team of temporary election workers. My elections specialist in the office actually came from a finance background in another department. She prepares the budget book and she does 1099s for us. We actually move people where the resources are needed. If things get slow in elections, which hasn't happened for a couple of years, but when they used to get slow in elections, one of the people there would come out and help in finance. So there's a fair amount of moving people around to meet the needs.
Thanks.
Other questions? David Dellendorf, you've already gone. Let me see if there's any others first. Dick's already gone. Janet.
I'm going to defer to Jane. She's had her hand up for a while, but then I'll go after Jane.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jane. I didn't see you. Sorry, Jane. So Jane go, then Janet, and then we'll go to David and Dick.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, I didn't have it up for too long, but thank you. This was kind of touched on a few minutes ago, but you didn't delve a lot into it yet, Mylene. I'm wondering, do you have thoughts on cost savings if there were to be, say, a merger of, the Office of Treasurer and the Office of, say, Assessor, like because usually with a merger, you want to create efficiencies and then savings if you can. Doesn't always happen, but could there potentially be some cost savings for the county if one of these kinds of mergers were looked at?
I can't say that with certainty. I believe that when you combine two departments into one, you have more opportunity for cross-utilization of people. Just like I was talking to Dave about, okay, I can use this elections person and to fill an extra need in finance. I can move my front counter people to elections when I need them. One of the things I would envision if the treasurer's office were a part of the auditor's office is they wouldn't have to serve the counter anymore, because we have 3 counter people, and those people would have to learn another system, but they already know 2 systems, and they could take tax payments and answer questions. So it's hard to know exactly what might happen, but yes, I can envision some efficiencies. I'm sure that if assessor and treasurer were combined, there would be efficiencies as well. Whether it would be enough to eliminate a person, hard to say.
Okay, we're gonna go to Janet.
I'm Mylene. My question is really small, but it just stuck out in the PowerPoint presentation. Why has the recording fee of amount that goes to the county of $6.89 not gone up in 40 years?
That's a really good question. It's legislated, and legislators don't like to raise fees to counties. Okay, close your ears, Kevin. So the state
I'm going to agree with you.
Tends to ignore the counties. They heap responsibilities on them without giving the funding to support those responsibilities. And the $5 that we get for recording and have been getting since 1984, in 1984, it may have paid for the service. It doesn't come close to it now. The other $1.89 is a small administrative fee on 2 of the affordable housing fees. And I have no complaints about affordable housing being funded this way. But for goodness sakes, let's at least support the counties that are providing this service and don't continue to eat into their coffers because you want all the money that's being collected to go to affordable housing. I mentioned that in 2019, the auditors were able to get a increase in the base fee and licensing from $3 to $4.50 or $5 to $6. Anyway, it was $1.50 increase in both titles and registrations. That was a fight too, which we did for 2 or 3 years. And I think we may soon be looking at doing the same thing with recording. But the legislature is understandably resistant to increases in fees to the public, particularly if they do something as boring and unsexy as supporting the counties.
David, and then Dick, and then we'll close it off.
Mylene, 2 related questions. Is there a norm within the state or within the United States as to whether or not auditors are either elected or appointed? And with regard to that issue, is there any reason to be concerned that in a small county like this with a small, not a large pool of qualified candidates, that by having elected auditors instead of appointed, that we run the risk of not having qualified applicants, and we might only have 1, for example, not being qualified? Now, you are an exception to all this. Every time this issue comes up, everybody uses you as a perfect example because you didn't have this necessarily this experience, but you've done such an excellent job. Everybody acknowledges that. So don't hold this question against me, but so
I understand.
could
I've
you
heard
answer
the
the
question before. I think there are a lot of talented people here in this county. I think that our educators are very smart, and our educators, I'm sorry, I mean our voters are very smart. And I think one of the ways we see this is in other ballot measures. I remember several years ago, someone, Island was running a levy. And generally this county votes for school levies, right? Well, the school district did not have a very good plan, and it was clear. And people knew that. And because we have smart electorate, and they said, nah, come back with us with a real plan. And it failed. And they came back with a real plan, and it passed. And I think that's just one example. I think if you have a qualified candidate and an unqualified candidate, this county will vote for the qualified candidate. And as I said, particularly the auditor the job is so diverse that I think many different backgrounds, including somebody just schooled in management, could do the job. You know, if you don't have my finance background, then you may spend more time in elections and hire a strong finance person. But I don't think that the county is so small you can't find qualified candidates.
and the norm in other counties and around the country?
Go ahead, David.
I think they're mostly elected, as far as I know. And
Thank you.
they're usually called clerks, by the way.
Okay, Dick.
So Mylene, it's our understanding that the county manager oversees better than half of county departments. So put yourself a year and 11 months down the road. And again, it's your decision. Would you have the county manager be the lead on budget and the auditor be the secondary person, or leave it the way it is? And again, why?
First of all, I'm going to take issue with that. I don't think that the county manager is over half the department, more than half the departments. There are 8 departments that are led by electeds. And, you know, if you count the tiny departments like HR, then maybe there's more admin departments. But I think that the elected half is probably pretty close to the admin half. The bigger departments are definitely under admin, which would be health and public works and community development. Those are the 3 biggest departments. Okay, that's just a sidelight. You know, when the charter was first passed, it did have budget under the county manager, county administrator it was called then. And the last CRC moved it to the county auditor. I think it can work either way. Again, I think I've said this before, I am a big believer in an independent financial voice. I think you need someone who is not beholden to the council to be able to speak freely and to offer views that are not dictated by the council. And that's why I think that the budget being with the auditor is a good idea. Would the county survive if it was with the county manager? Of course it would. And honestly, it was not a lot different when the county manager had it, in the sense that the auditor's office still put together the budget. The county manager issued the budget call, and which is just writing a letter saying, hey, sending me your budget. And that's right, he put together the budget book also. He was never so happy to get rid of anything as that. But there's a lot of collaboration in the budget, as I said, so it would survive either way. I think there's a lot of value in an independent financial voice.
Interesting.
Thank you, Mylene, very much. A couple points that I will raise just in closing. One is, I raised this with you many years ago, just as a total sidebar, almost a non sequitur. Have you ever considered doing deputy auditor for a day for marriage licenses? I know of several jurisdictions that do this that are tourist jurisdictions, and then friends get to marry with an official designation. They get to be the officiant for the marriage, and they make really good money off of it. They charge like, $500 to be a deputy auditor for a day. So just planting a seed, wondering if you've ever considered that. I don't even
First of all, in this state, the auditor is not allowed to do marriages. Only
No,
the
I
judge.
know, but when we looked into, anyway, like I said, planting a seed, I think there's a way to get around it. But the other thing I just wanted to say though is I love seeing how much of a team you've built, how supportive you are of your employees, of your working parents, how supportive you have been during this last year. So just thank you for everything you've been doing in addition to this wonderful presentation you've given us today.
I have a remarkable staff, and for those of you who know any of them, you know that, and I'm grateful. So thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome. The last thing I will say is something you neglected to say, which has been an incredible function you have served. Mylene, in the 10 years I was in the Senate, was in Olympia lobbying on behalf of San Juan County more than any other official. Most of the officials we never saw, period. The reason why the state, not the reason, but one of the stronger advocates for small counties getting to keep licensing. Can you imagine if you had to go to Anacortes every time you wanted to register something? It'd be a real pain. It was Mylene who was down, not just talking to me, I was sold, but talking to every other legislator about why this was so important and rallying up the other ones who represented rural communities. And so there has been a real important need for the auditor anyway to be a lobbyist for San Juan County's needs. And that would be very different if they were not elected. So.
Yeah,
That's true. Kevin.
good
Thank you.
point. Good point.
Yeah. Okay, Mylene, thank you very much. We're going to move into asking Olivia thank you. Thank you, Mylene.
Thank you, Mylene. Well done.
So Olivia had just an excellent back and forth with our prosecuting attorney and suggested that we have a very brief conversation with the commission about the consistency of operations for our committees. And so I'm going to turn it over to Olivia.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I'm just going to go over the email that Randy sent out to us. Thank you so much for answering those questions, Randy. That really helped us kind of formulate a plan moving forward. So I'm going to read off the question and then the answer that he submitted. So this is all based around our committees that we have formulated, and it's really important for all the leaders to pay attention right now because you are in charge of your committee. So, do we need to post the Zoom link for each committee meeting on our webpage so the public can enter the meeting at any time? The answer is yes. In San Juan County, committee meetings are subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, just the same as meetings of the entire body. This approach is a consequence of the County Charter Section 2.8 and the San Juan County Charter 2.11.070. So Catherine and I are working on getting that posted so it's easy for people to go in. And then the second question is, do all the committee meetings need to be recorded if there are at least 9 commissioners present? The answer is yes. The recording of the meetings is not dependent on the number of the commissioners present. So under the policies for the San Juan County, even the subcommittees of less than a majority are subject to OPMA. A record should be kept of the meeting, and that record should be done in a consistent manner for all committees. Written minutes can be used in lieu of recording, but you should be consistent in your approach. If you start recording with one committee, then I strongly recommend that you record for all committees, and else you should explain why you are not being consistent. Otherwise, you open yourself up to some unfounded accusation, improper purpose. So recording is convenient and easy and can be a substitute for minutes, but not for written reports and summaries of action taken. The form of record keeping is something that the that the CRC should discuss so that there is consistency with all committees. So I just want to pause there. So I know that we have all been using the county Zoom account for our meetings, and all of those are being recorded and saved on our account because we pay for the extra service. So are there any committee leaders who are having trouble with that? I just want to make sure that everyone is doing that.
Yes.
Great, fantastic. Okay.
Wait, Olivia, I've got a question. Olivia?
Please.
Are you saying that you and Catherine will be doing that posting on the webpage?
Anything that has to be uploaded, yeah, we are working
Okay.
together to make sure that those are posted. Your job as the leader is just to make sure that you click record, let everyone know the meeting is recording, and start your meeting. And then at the
Great.
end. That's all you got to do.
What about, is there any necessity to post any result of the meeting vis-a-vis notes or minutes, anything like that?
Yeah, so that is in the next couple questions that we
sorry.
brought up to Randy. It's okay, no worries. That's a great question, Bob. So I'm going to go to Jane.
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. Just a quick question on, because I was using my own Zoom account for the first 2 meetings of Justice and Equity. I have those recordings, and so is it pretty straightforward for me then just to upload them into the Microsoft Teams folder as appropriate? Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do that. And minutes we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions about this so far? Okay, moving on. So the third question is, do we need to post the committee meeting agenda and minutes to our webpage? The answer is yes. This is consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act and the policies of the County Council. It will inform the public of whether they wish to attend any meetings. Also, the link to the online access can be put at the top of the agenda. I urge committees to meet regularly at the same date and time so that their meetings are considered regular under the OPMA. So this is where it's going to be really important for us to create an agenda, and that will also be posted to our webpage. Catherine and I have a brief time after this meeting to talk about how we're going to make that look. So if you are a leader, we do need your agenda ahead of time. We will be creating a space for the link for that regular meeting. And so you can put it in your agenda, or we can just have it on the webpage. Either way, we need to make sure that it's accessible and consistent for anyone to attend. The other thing that I want to bring up from this answer here is that Randy did bring up how we need to make sure that this is consistent. So I know that a couple of our committees have decided to change their time. So just please keep in consideration that we have been requested to keep things regular. So any questions?
Bill.
Bill. You're muted.
I just like to confirm or deny my understanding. If it's a regular meeting and the committee meetings are being set for regular times, they can put on their agendas new business so that when the leaders put together their agendas, your discussion is not limited to what's on that. Anything can come up if it comes under new business and is raised as such.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anne Marie has her hand up.
Is there a timeline for submitting our agendas?
As soon as possible. Just note that we, have Catherine for a limited amount of time. We're trying to keep her hours to a maximum of 10. She's gone over a little bit, but we do have to consider our budget as well. So as soon as you can, that would be great.
Tony?
I think we need a clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We need a clarification because I just heard, I think it was maybe Bill, that I think in my experience has been that if you add an item during an agenda discussion at the beginning of a meeting, that item cannot be something that you have to decide on. It could be an item of discussion, but not to decide on, because otherwise it would not give the public enough information on the agenda that was posted sometime before that day to attend or not attend. So if they attend or not attend, and you speak about an item that was never published beforehand, that could be a problem. And then Randy could,
So technically, under the rules we adopted and under open public meetings and such, you could take action on an item. However, I would strongly agree with the sentiment of what you're saying, which is if it is new business, I would really encourage each of us not to take action on an item if it's brand new on the agenda. Maybe have a nice discussion of it and punt the executive action until the following meeting.
yeah, I mean, what would preclude us from coming up with some item at the last minute and making a decision on it without any public input? That would not be right to the public.
It's not good business. I've got Tom and then David.
Oh, well, I just wanted to know where's the absolute safest Zoom link is. Is it on the calendar or is it in a memo on a separate page? We had a little problem in one of the committees last week.
I mean, the Zoom link will be posted to the website, and also if you want to add it to your agenda, and then you can also access it in your calendar, in your county email. So, I mean, the more visibility, the better, just to make sure everyone knows where to access it.
We're gonna go to David and Liz. Did I see your hand up? Okay, so David, and then that's it. Hopefully we can move on.
Olivia, I think it's great that you put the Zoom link on the agenda, so it's all in one place and we don't have to hunt all over for it. And I think you said you were going to do that. I have a comment or question about what Tony said. We are subcommittees. We are not the committee that's going to be making the final decision and recommendation to the county council. So does that argument about making decisions of new items, new business, really apply to us as subcommittees?
Technically, by the law, it doesn't, but what I said is exact. I think it makes sense that if any of the public wanted to attend our meeting and they knew what the agenda was, then they're going to be able to weigh in on that. If I were a member of the public and I looked at the agenda and saw that there was nothing being discussed that day that I cared about, so I didn't attend the subcommittee, and then I heard that there was a recommendation made to the full commission, I think it's just better behavior on our part. I think technically you're correct that because there's subcommittees, it's not as prevalent, but I think it's better behavior on our part. And Bill, you had your hand up in response. You're going to agree or not?
I don't pretend to be Randy, but I have discussed this with him because it's a logical problem. I think first place, you just have to exercise good judgment. If something comes up in new business that you know, and we all know what's hot in this county, we all know, there's no point being technical. Final action should not be taken, I think, even for going to the committee at large until you've had another shot at it. But at least you can raise the issue and have discussion about it. But I think as to minor housekeeping and discussion of what's already on the agenda, I don't see a problem. But otherwise, it looks like you're sneaking something through, and optics are everything, and the confidence in the process.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Bill. And I'm going to cut off this discussion because if we don't, we're not getting to anything else. If you have any more questions, refer to the email that Randy wrote in response to Olivia. It's an excellent documentation of everything we just went through. But thank you all for the discussion. And Olivia, thank you for suggesting we discuss this. Okay.
No problem.
So, we had open public, we have public comment at this point on the agenda. Typically, we've done that in the last 10 minutes, but because it's listed here, what I'm going to do is ask if there's any members of the public who would like to comment now, and then I'm going to raise the question again in the last 10 minutes as well, just as a brief. But is there anybody from the public who would like to speak to the commission at this point in time? And if so, just turn on your video, or if you're on your phone, just go ahead and speak. Okay, great. And I went ahead to do that just because that last item took longer. So now we're going to go back to the committee reports. And I'm hoping that we can just spend a few minutes on each. What we're looking for is highlights from each of the committees on just what discussions have taken place and if there's anything that's beginning to gain traction in your committee. So I do not have a specific order on this. So would somebody like to volunteer to go first?
I will.
Okay, please, Sharon.
I'm all ready. I hope this is not too long.
Well,
Can you
let's
hear me okay?
under 5 minutes and preferably closer to 3.
Okay, let's see how fast we can do this. I'm going to report on the Justice and Equity Committee. Here we go. Okay, so we've had 2 meetings. We've been talking about our vision for the county as a beacon of hope and real justice. The county government needs to lead by example, and we want to assess and make sure that we're doing that as a county. We need to identify what isn't working, what can be improved in the county, how can the status quo be improved with and more equitable for anybody going through the system here. We need to identify what sections of the charter we should be focusing on. We are looking at the preamble, but are there other parts of the charter that this committee can make an impact on? So some of the issues we've highlighted in these 2 meetings are responding to the needs of people of color, the elderly, people with disabilities in San Juan County. To what extent do our social services serve people? How can we most effectively and respectfully invite people in to give us feedback and help us know we're being inclusive and supportive or not? Invite people of color in San Juan County into our process. How can we most respectfully and effectively do that? We talked about finding out if all the police in San Juan County are educated about racial sensitivity. We talked about representing the history of the Coast Salish tribes in San Juan County. How can we better represent this in the county structure? Kevin will be reaching out to Sharon Kinley and Jay Julius from the Lummi Nation to speak with us. And what about the homeless population here and young people with diverse genders and the Mexican population? Are they being taken care of appropriately? Our responsibility in respecting those who are coming behind us, the youth. Are we being responsible to them? Other related issues, people retiring in San Juan County are not getting replaced, so the county government is getting older. There's an opportunity for fundamental impact there. Teaching racial equity is a real skill. So how do we do this? How we do this is very important, so as not to alienate people who get triggered and feel threatened when the subject is broached. How can we change behaviors through education? How does that apply to county governance? Is there a question of staffing there? Another thing that came up was that there has been sexual harassment in some of our schools. So more than the state's required training is needed on that. And what is the responsibility of our local government in that regard? Couple other points. We have equal pay laws as of 2 years ago in Washington State, but we haven't done an audit to see if gender equality truly exists in our county. Possible opportunity to update these things within the like the annual audit to be done by this commission. San Juan County Council passed a resolution on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion last year. It's a solid resolution in many ways, but it does not direct the county government or elected offices to actually do anything. Jane is going to be having a conversation with Mike about this. Is there any oversight, any requirements to fulfill? Use of force is not in the resolution. So she's going to be having a conversation with Mike about that. Some actions we've taken, town halls. We are inviting people to the town halls, and I'll be asking people we know in our communities for feedback. One resource to look into is the MRSC, and I have something else about that here, Municipal Research and Services Center. We want to dive into the King County links. We have to see if we can get some guidance there. Looking into a Bill of Rights example that may already exist in another county charter, although we haven't found anything yet. Kyle will do the mechanics of the file sharing in Teams for us and explore his specific bullet points on topic material. See if anyone else has addressed those. and we'll look into where charter language could go. We continue looking into already existing documents we can draw from, incorporate feedback from people in San Juan County, maybe invite someone from King County's Law and Justice Oversight Committee to talk with us about how that will play out now that it's been approved by the voters in King County. Kyle is reaching out to Kevin Carter to inform us about justice and equity work that he's been doing in the county over the last year. Hopefully he'll come to speak with us next week on March 8th. Kevin is reaching out to Berto Gondara here on Orcas to see if he can attend next week's Justice and Equity Committee meeting. And Kevin is putting together some specific questions for the sheriff to give him an idea of what we would like to ask him about. We may also be consulting with Attorney Kyle Loring and Katie Loring, who is a judge here in San Juan County. And I personally am continuing to reach out to some of my friends on Orcas about equity and justice issues.
Exactly 5 minutes. Okay. One thing you danced around, but is important for the rest of the commission to know, there is an active discussion also about the creation of a Justice and Equity Commission, which would be an action that this body would take to create that commission, similar to what was done in King County. Any questions for Sharon or any other members of this committee? Tony, please.
I'm sorry, I was putting my hand up for the next discussion.
Oh, okay. Any questions or comments on the Equity and Justice Subcommittee? Okay, great. Tony, please go ahead. And again, if you could highlight anything that's starting to gain traction, not necessarily a summary of all the discussion, but really high points of what we may hear from you as a recommendation to the full commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had one meeting. It was attended by our group.
Tony, what committee?
This is the Elections Committee. Mm-hmm. And we focused mostly on the 3 items that were on the spreadsheet, which were the CRC commissioners elected district-wide or county-wide. We also discussed about changing some language in the reference in 5.20 regarding district versus legislative district. And we talked about an election issue that one of our members had in last time. As far as the CRC countywide or district-wide election, we had a hearty discussion, and one of our members is going to chat with the constituents to come back with an update on what the constituents feel like. As far as the language in the 5.20, which is regarding legislative versus other kind of district, we decided to leave it as it is, and we would recommend that to the larger group because legislative gets very complicated with other legislative districts in the state. And then lastly, the elections question that came up, we decided that as a commission, this is more of a procedural issue, not a governance issue. And we agreed that we will come up with a statement by one of our members to present to the larger group when that time comes. We have another meeting tomorrow. We're going to add countywide elections for all the elected versus a district election for all the elected, not just the CRC commissioners. We're going to discuss that hopefully tomorrow. Then there might be 1 or 2 items that will come up again tomorrow because one of our members had wanted to add those items. So at the end of our meeting, we all felt that we had a really good meeting, and Sharon Abreu did a great job taking notes. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Minute 40 seconds. Awesome. Any questions for Tony? Maureen?
No questions for Tony.
Oh, okay. So you want to go next? Any questions for Tony? Okay, Maureen, please.
Thank you. Our committee is the elected versus appointed subcommittee. We've had 2 meetings. Our first meeting, we discussed at pretty good length the pros and cons of elected versus appointed, and everyone had interesting thoughts and ideas. We kept it to that so that we could begin the other discussions with a broader base. It seemed like the best way to launch that. We discussed how to handle this, what our future topics would be. And we had and got into more substance on our second meeting. Our second meeting, we did a dive into the county manager, elected or appointed. And I can say that at the end of that discussion, the majority of our group felt that the county manager should be appointed and not elected, and that we are going to set that one aside, write up a rationale with it, and it will be part of the recommendations that we will make to the greater and full commission. We hope to do that with each of the items. And I realized how important it was for us to go back to the list that we have been assigned from the spreadsheet and start tackling each of the items so that we are doing what we're supposed to do here. And so I've begun to do that. That'll be part of our agenda henceforth. We discussed the sheriff, should that office be elected or appointed? And a lot of good information was brought up, and I want to announce to our commission, our subcommittee, as well as a full group, that Ron Krebs has agreed to come next Wednesday. I'm not sure, Kevin, whether you have put that into the agenda for next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And it was on my mind that if anybody in the full commission has questions that we could submit to Ron in advance, he'd appreciate it. I know our group has a lot of questions that they'll ask, but that would be helpful. So we picked a future topic, which will be, the next topic will be to dive into auditor and treasurer consolidation, or treasurer and assessor as a consolidation. And I suspect that's going to take us some time. But we feel that there are items on our list that are a little bit redundant. We can group them, and hopefully we're just trying to keep this moving forward. And I'll tell you, it's a very good group, and they have some wonderful thoughts. So that's my report.
Any questions for Maureen?
Or corrections?
Jane?
Yeah, thanks. Just a quick question for you, Maureen, and it sounds like you haven't yet delved in that deeply yet, but I'm just curious to know, in terms of amalgamation of any of those roles that came up in the conversation with Mylene as well. I mean, do you think that you guys will be looking at that from the perspective of cost savings and efficiency? I'm assuming so, but have you guys talked around that at all yet, or?
We haven't gotten to that yet, because each of the items that brought up about a consolidated department requires a cost analysis. And that's a very important part of it. So yes, that will be considered. I forgot to mention one thing that I think is important. I'm sorry, Jane, is that your question? Thank you. We also talked about not prematurely submitting anything for a legal opinion until we had a list of items for that we would give to Kevin and Olivia, and then they can sort through what needs to be submitted to Randy. So I forgot, that's an important thing to bring up.
Thank you. I would also say, and we didn't bring this up in our presentation, but the Justice and Equity Committee has had a very brief conversation about appointed versus selected for the sheriff, because there's rationale and conversation as well. And so it'll be interesting to see where you guys come down finally on that. And then we may have a little discussion on that one as well. But hopefully I'm going to sit in on your meetings.
Please do.
So
please do.
Okay. Who wants to go next? Is that Patty?
Bring snacks.
That's Patty. This is about the Initiative and Resolution Committee, and it's a really short report. Dick Grout was our lead, and he realized that he needed to withdraw from this subcommittee because he's on 3 others, and the time commitments have become unworkable. I've taken his role as lead, and he did say that he'd be touching back with us because we can use his expertise. I wrote something, so I'll just read that. We met for the second time on March 1st, Monday. We had technical difficulties getting started and were able to begin at 7:35 p.m. and our regular meeting time is 7 o'clock. Hopefully we'll get that worked out. We heard from attorney Kyle Loring, who emphasized that he was not giving us any legal advice. Kyle was involved with the Lopez Island Initiative attempt for orca protection that would have extended the boating distance, among other things. And Kyle fielded our questions about the challenges initiatives face. Our goal is to make the initiative process for San Juan County as robust as possible and to make the process accessible for serious but not frivolous initiatives. And at our next meeting on Monday, March 9th, we will determine the issues we want to focus on. And the current suggestions are lowering signature percentages, striking the financial limitation clause, maybe electronic signature gathering, and working on the mini initiative. There are certainly others to come, but those are what we had so far. That was it.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions for Patty? Okay, next. Dave Anderson, please.
Right, here we go. We had our first governance committee meeting on last Sunday between 4 and 5 o'clock. And there was it was just only the first one, because the first one we scheduled, there was some conflicts. So I think we found that between 4 and 5 o'clock on Sundays isn't the best time. So we have rescheduled our meetings to Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. So in the future, our meetings are going to be Thursdays to 8 p.m. The first meeting, we talked a lot about the parameters of our committee. We have 18 subjects that were given to us to look at, and some of them are kind of quite large. There was also some concern coming with the discussion from the electeds versus appointed committee, but there's some crossover issues that we want to make sure that we're not working issues too, there's not too much duplicity between the committees, and that we want to make sure that we're communicating with each other to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's feet. So we're going to be mindful of that going forward. And I think we're going to work well with the elections and the elected and appointed committee. And so the broad themes that I think that we're going to be looking at then in terms of what we discussed that we're going to be probably viewing are the branches of government. What is the separation of our branches of government? What is the nature of the firewall between the legislative branch and the executive branch, and how effective how effective is the county manager in terms of relating to the county council, and is the county council an appropriate size since it's been shrunk? Are we getting enough leadership, and is it functioning well, and is it effective? Those were some questions that were brought to us, and I think that we are eager to look at those. Also, the issue of island government, the incorporating government, incorporating islands to have their own self-government, and can the county extend that right to them? That's a big issue, and that's something that we've heard some interest in wanting us to continue to talk about that. And there will certainly be a lot of opinions coming to us about that. We are looking forward to the public comment. I think that social media and our town meetings are good. I think they're going to provide us a lot of insight to how we should approach these issues. And there will probably be some legal questions coming we'll put forward in the future. There are many other issues that we'll be having to look at, but those are the broad themes that I think that I sense that we're going to be looking at. This next meeting tomorrow night between 7 and 8, we're going to winnow down and bring focus to the large issues and build a timeline and about how we want to address these issues. So that's pretty much what's going on with governance right now, and happy to take any questions.
Great. Any questions for Dave? Okay. Bob, is that a question or you want to talk?
Well, if there were no questions, I was ready to go into my committee.
Go ahead.
Okay. We're talking about the Charter Review Process Committee, which we have sort of taken to calling just the Process Committee to keep the name short. I'll say this, that committee meets at 10:30 in the morning and until 12 noon every Tuesday at a regular time. There are only 5 members on this committee, and they're 5 really good folks. But what that means is that if you look at our agenda for a coming meeting and you have some interest in it, we can afford to have some people come. However, I would appreciate it if members of the committee who are going to attend that meeting would let me know so I can go, okay, 6, 7, 8, stop, okay? So that we don't get too many folks attending that meeting. I would be surprised if we run into that problem, but you never know. Okay, we have only had one meeting, which was a week ago Tuesday, because our meeting yesterday, we only have the 5 people, and 2 very important people weren't able to attend. And so we decided after a brief discussion to not have a meeting. We didn't turn on the recorder. It's going to be a non-meeting. However, and we're going to take that agenda that was planned and move it to next week on Tuesday. However, we did decide, the 3 of us who were there, to also get with the other 2 who were not present and advocate that they join the 3 of us in attending, because of the importance of the issue with the Bill of Rights, attending the Conversation Cafe that the Community Rights San Juan Islands is hosting this Thursday night at 5:30 to 7:30. And the subject matter will be, do county residents need a stronger voice in how we address climate change and the further degradation of the beautiful wilderness that surrounds us? And could a Bill of Rights that includes rights of nature language in the Home Rule Charter, that's us, be a way for us to state our values, protect ourselves, and protect the natural world around us in the face of these threats? So here's a meeting that's taking place that involves our process. And so we're all going to try and be there to take a look at what happens. There's going to be another meeting regarding the same issues and the comprehensive plan the following week on the 11th. You can go to the Facebook for Community Rights San Juan Islands and get the link to get it to come on to those meetings. Okay. Now, that was a discussion of the Bill of Rights. And by the way, if I could stop for just a second and say how important I think it is that Kevin has gotten us doing this thing where we're reporting in, because I believe that we're going to find time and again that we're bleeding over from one committee to another, and naturally, because there are kind of cross subjects. An example that we've discovered just recently is with the talk about a Bill of Rights, because of the process committee is going to be considering that. The Justice Committee, we heard the folks talk about, we heard Sharon talk about the Justice Committee's interest in a Bill of Rights. And I know from my participation in the Climate Environment Committee that it also has an interest in the Bill of Rights as it pertains to climate and environment. So, a matter of fact, we're even talking about a way to one report to the other, and so that we can see how things are going there. So, although I initially wanted to start off with the first part, the preamble, my committee said, no, let's do the Bill of Rights first. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a look at the Bill of Rights first, and we're going to gather information regarding that. And I think going to the Community Rights San Juan Islands meeting and listening, I mean, Julianne Battaglia, as you all know, came in and talked to us about all of this. We're going to go there and listen to what they have to say and see if there's a couple of pieces of information on that website, by the way, if you go to it, that talks about other bills of rights that are specific. We're going to take that out, take a look at it, and go from there. Then I think we will probably back up to the preamble, which we expect will be aspirational and will also contain a clause regarding climate and environment as an aspirational aspect. We recognize that that's what the preamble is, and that it will take other fleshing out in the charter to talk about that very, very important topic. One that I think is, for instance, probably the single most important topic. Then we're going to get down to, after we
Bob,
tackle those.
I'm
Yes.
going to have to ask you to wrap it up, please.
Time. The final thing is how we
Time.
find out what the folks are interested in, and you know what improvements we can make. The end.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any questions for Bob? Okay, Anne Marie.
I don't have a question for Bob.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well,
Jane, Jane, do you have a question for Bob? You're muted.
Yeah,
Jane,
just
you're muted.
thank you. Yeah, just a really quick one, Bob. I would have liked to sit in on that meeting tomorrow night. I'm already a bit slammed with 2 committee meetings tomorrow night, so I can't fit that one in between. I'm hoping that we can, if Kyle or Kevin or Sharon can't sit in on that meeting tomorrow night, I'm interested to understand if they're talking about Bill of Rights at all in the context of human beings, or is it just nature? My sense from Julie is really nature, right? But I haven't had a chance to look at the 3 examples. They all seem to be from the state of Pennsylvania of Bill of Rights that have been built into county charters, and I want to do that. But I would love to follow up with any of you that sit in on that discussion, because I just can't. I can't do 4.5 hours of Zoom meetings tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, so I think, Bill, do you have a question?
I have a quick comment. We have to be careful about what we're following, because the examples that town hall meeting are following are examples that rise from different constitutions. We don't have what they have to rely on, but it is something that our committee, that's Bob's committee, will be discussing. And it is a hot issue. It is one of the hot issues, whether you're talking about human rights, property rights, or natural rights. And you'll find them all intertwined. And I think our committee is going to have a lot to say about that, because we cannot do what other states have done yet.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Any other, okay, David Dellendorf.
I'm not on any of those committees, subcommittees, but I've got to say that it seems very confusing on the outside as to the overlap. I mean, Bob referred to it, and I just don't see how these things can be achieved, what we want to achieve in a brief manner, because we can't have a long preamble along this, along that, without having an agreement and having a cohesive summary of what we're trying to achieve. And I know that's up to Kevin to make sure that happens, but I'm sitting on the outside. I'm just very confused how we have 3 different committees with overlap, and whether or not it might be better to combine that in some manner. But that's Kevin, that's where you come in. I'm sure you'll figure out the best way to do it. Thank you.
So two responses to that. One is you should join more committees. The second one is that is exactly why we're doing this update, and we're going to have this update at every single meeting going forward, so that everybody can hear the highlights of a committee. And if you choose to do so, you can go sit in on that committee meeting if they have a few enough members. And if they don't, you can watch the video, and then at the next full commission meeting, bring up your concerns. We've divided them as best we can. They're not going to be perfect. We're not going to revisit the divisions. I don't want to spend time on that. So I say we go forward and work the best we can. And where there's overlap, we're already starting to see some conversations take place between members, which is really good. And then the conversation will take place here. Sharon.
Just wanted to say I will be sitting in on that conversation cafe about the Bill of Rights tomorrow.
Awesome.
I will be there.
Great. And I will say, Bill, I was thinking about the same thing you brought up too, having actually written legislation for numerous, actually 37 states I wrote legislation for in the last 24 months. And it is not cookie cutter. You cannot take one law from one place and just plug it into another. State constitution, drafting policies, county ordinances, so on. There's all sorts of statutes that are different. That said, if there's a good example, it's great to look at it and see if we can mold it into something that could work here. Liz.
I think I'm correct in what I'm about to say, that that group for the Conversation Cafe is working with an attorney out of Port Townsend. So he's familiar with Washington law, and his focus is on Community Bill of Rights. So I think they're getting counsel as to, not something in Pennsylvania, not something in Florida, but somebody who's very familiar with Washington state law. And he'll be on that call tomorrow night. So it'd be a great opportunity to, and then we're going to try and have him on our subcommittee so we'll hear what he has to say. We can collect our questions and then ask him further about them. So, and he doesn't know that yet. So don't, we haven't confirmed that he'll be able to join our subcommittee.
Okay. So can we move on to our final committee? I think it's our final, right? We just have environment and climate left. Is that it?
No, operations. That's why I had my hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, please. Let's do operations first.
Okay, so I'm reporting for our operations committee. Maureen is drafting some suggestions for the personnel manual, and we know that we don't have real say on that for the charter, but she's making some suggestions and how they can change that. We'll see what the commissioners say. I was asked to write up a suggestion for change under section 2.42 under interactions with county employees to include anti-bullying wording. And our next meeting will be talking about having an ombudsman, or creating some kind of department where people can go and they can ask questions and be pushed in the right direction to get the information that they needed. And then we are going to talk about section 4.4, the county manager, next meeting as well. And Maureen is working on drafting her suggestion for public records and how to make some suggestions on what we can change within the charter to make it easier for people living within the county to get documents. And that would be under section 10.5. And then we spent a good majority of the meeting guided by Paul talking about salaries. And that was a very interesting discussion. So we took the Excel spreadsheet that had all the suggestions, that created our own for just operations to have kind of a flow chart of what we talked about for each meeting and what was discussed.
Excellent. Thank you, Olivia. Any questions for Olivia? Okay, Anne-Marie.
So the Climate and Environment Committee meets on Wednesdays from 10 to noon. And we had great input from the full commission on the ideas for climate and environment. It's all been very valuable and very helpful to us in shaping our thinking and discussions. We are in agreement in the need to create an elected position to deal with climate, the environment, sustainability, and resiliency. And we came to that conclusion today. And I think that's probably enough. We're going to have some speakers to kind of help us develop some more of the ideas that we've gotten from the full committee, for the full commission.
Any questions for Anne-Marie? Wonderful. Okay, I hope each of you found this as useful as I have. I find it fascinating, frankly, to hear about each of the individual discussions. I also want to thank each of you for stepping up and participating in these subcommittees, sorry, Bob, committees, in addition to these meetings too. I know it's a lot of time, but this happens once every 10 years, so it's good that we're putting in the time needed. Any other comments overall about this process? Tony, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, and I probably said it, and it's worth repeating, that our elections committee is probably the best committee with the best group of folks that are very dedicated. So I just want to encourage you to come and sit in once in a while. We have a very solid group, and thank you, that committee, for being part of our group. It's really, really great. Thank you. And I was looking in the reactions. You can do a thumbs up.
do a thumbs down. So I don't.
We need
Liz,
to have a volleyball tournament.
It's the best
Liz,
question there is. I'm
Liz,
sorry.
do you have a question or comment?
I just have some pushback for Tony. And Tony, I hate to differ with you, but we've got the best group.
Okay, everybody's got the best group. Sharon, do you have an actual question, or are you going to argue with Tony?
No, I was just gonna say we have the best group. No, what I wanted to say was I just wanted to make it clear that on the Climate and Environment Committee, we had I guess what you would call a supermajority agreement on creating some kind of a climate commissioner position. We weren't in 100% agreement, but we were in mostly agreement.
Well, it's perfect. People, the rest of the commission now understands that that's an issue that's gaining traction within this subcommittee and will likely be coming back to the full commission. Jane.
Yeah, I just wanted to argue against Tony that yeah, Justice and Equity has the best committee. I'm kidding, but I did want to say I thought Sharon might mention this, but we do welcome other commissioners who are interested in following some of the gender justice and equity conversations that we're having. We hope to begin to get more and more focused as well. But yeah, so we've got there are 4 of us. It's Sharon and myself and Kevin and Kyle. And yeah, so if any of you are interested in popping in and after you hear an update next week or something, please feel free because yeah, I think on some level these issues are going to resonate. So thank you.
And I'm not going to call on anybody else. We'll just say that everybody's committee is awesome. Okay, we want to quickly go into the town halls. I'm hoping to actually finish this pretty early today and then discuss our final agenda item. So on the town halls, I'm hoping people have started to spread the word. They're happening March 12th and 13th. And actually, there's one other thing on the committee updates. By next week, by next Wednesday, if there are questions that are starting to come up that you feel you would like some legal input on, if you could get those to me so that we can start going through those and start pulling them together so that we can get Randy a group of questions at once, as opposed to, firing random questions over to his office and his team. So this is not a deadline that if you have questions in 2 or 3 weeks, we're not going to get them to Randy. He's going to be available to us throughout this process. But if there are initial questions that are starting to come up where there's differing opinions on the committee, or you believe there's a legal analysis necessary, if you can try and get those to me before Wednesday so that following next Wednesday's update, we can maybe get a first batch to Randy, is my hope. And then he'll need time within his office to review those and get back to us. So that'll give us a good runway of time there. The other thing I was going to say, which goes into the town halls for March 12th and 13th town hall meetings, is that's right around the corner now. And so by next Wednesday, if there are additional highlights or subjects that you want raised in the beginning of the town hall as something that you'd like citizens input on, please be prepared to give those to us. And so we've already gotten many of them now, but just so folks know, the way we're thinking of the town halls working is that we will give a very brief presentation in the beginning of the town hall, talking about what the charter is and what it isn't. But then also talking about some of the highlights of some of the hot topic issues that are being discussed by the full commission. And so that people can respond to those. People will want to hear, we're talking about the potential of elected versus appointed for different officials. We're talking about a potential of a new elected office. We're talking about a Bill of Rights, these sorts of things. And the reason we'd like to make sure we have any of those before Wednesday is if there's anywhere there's maybe a clearer legal issue, I want to be able to have a conversation with Randy, because we don't want the community to get really excited about something if it's very clear we can't go there, is one issue for me. The other issue, though, is just we want to put together the agenda for the town hall and have an idea of that. And so before Wednesday, if we can make sure that at Wednesday's subcommittee breakouts, you guys give us the highlights, we can include those in the opening presentation for the town halls. With that, I will ask if there's any questions or issues or ideas for the town halls folks would like to raise. Liz, please.
I was just wondering, it seemed to me you had said something about a 3-minute format for the community members to speak. And is that dependent on how many people we have show up? One of my frustrations of having presented to the county council on several occasions is that format ends up being a monologue and not really a dialogue. It doesn't have that. Go ahead. It seems
No,
like you understood the question.
No, finish your thought, please.
Yeah, I'm just really wanting this to feel reciprocal and relational versus just report and then there's no feedback to the community member, no sense of related to, heard, not heard. How can we structure some of that in?
Yeah, so a couple things, and I will preface this by saying I'm probably going to counterpoint myself on this. We need the meeting to be structured, and so we can't allow just a constant back and forth. It just won't work. So it can't be just an open dialogue where people give comments, you respond, and then they respond to you. That's not what the meeting's for. The meeting is really to garner public input for our process. That said, to your first point, it will absolutely depend. The time limit will absolutely depend on the number of people there. If we have, a dozen people, or if we have 200 people, we're going to be much stricter on the clock. The counterpoint to that is I do think it's important that we have a clock, not visible, but we say we'd like people to stick to 3 minutes. There will be some people, most likely, who will have 5 pages that they want to read to us, and it's just not necessary. They can give us the written testimony and we can read it ourselves. And so I will try and keep us in line with that. But my biggest hope for this is that community members feel like they have a real opportunity to weigh in on the issues we're talking about or raise new issues. And keep in mind, we may get new issues at these town halls that then we need to put into our agendas and start considering. So there's kind of my, counterpoint on that. Liz, please.
So how would I respond? So Julianne has reached out to me saying she has an 11-minute presentation, which I understand if we're looking at 3 minutes, that's way long. How would I, respond? What's the best thing to tell her to do?
It's 4 words, not going to happen. We're not going to give somebody 11, even if they're, it's just, if she has an 11-minute presentation and she's spoken to the commission a couple times, I think that's fantastic. And she should provide that in writing, and we should all do our due diligence to read that. And then we can get back to her as well.
Okay. I don't know if it's a PowerPoint. I don't know what the format of it is. And I can, relay to her of it's not going to happen that way. And,
Well, I did, and they said to put
sorry,
it on.
Patty, you're on. Patty, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I.
No worries.
So, yeah, and I don't mean to be, that blunt, but we just need to make sure that that it's just, we can't allow 11 minutes for an individual presentation. We also are not going to allow PowerPoints or other presentations like that. Maybe, speaking to the commission as a whole. And again, we want it to be welcoming. And so we can give more time if there's less people, but we want to make sure that everybody who's there has an opportunity to speak too. Bill's had his hand up. And then
as individuals, though, we're free to talk with people. And I've been emailing back and forth with Julianne. She is intent on her cause, and other people are too. And I think it's incumbent on us to be fully receptive to them as individuals. The whole committee doesn't have to hear the whole spiel, but as long as we listen and consider, I've explained to her that some of what she wants is not possible and some of what she wants is, but that's a conversation between individuals. It should not tie everybody up. And I think each of us should deal with the Juliennes of the county, and there are many of them, and we are also Juliennes. We just happen to have been elected.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're all guilty of
I think
that.
we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. Liz, I'll come back to you. Let me circle around for a moment.
Can I wait just one second? I do want to point out, it was just pointed out to me that Julianne is on this meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, I just wasn't aware. So she's got her own context for the parameters of the town hall meeting. And I'm glad she's here to hear that directly and, you know, be able to do everything we can to have it welcoming and keep it tight.
Yeah, and I would say, Julianne, thank you. I think you've been our most active participant so far. I think you've been engaged in almost every meeting, which has been fantastic. And Bill, to your point, absolutely, each of us should be reaching out and having individual conversations with people who are more engaged so we can better understand their position.
I
Okay.
think it's our duty.
Yes, it is our duty. David Dillendorf.
I agree completely with you, Kevin, and there's a reason why the county council also has a 3-minute limit and doesn't engage in a dialogue. Here's a suggestion: when there is a point that's brought up by somebody and they obviously want to present it in more detail, that we might just make sure we hand out to the entire audience a list of all our subcommittees, who the main contact is, the chairs of the subcommittees, maybe a telephone number, and encourage them to reach out to Marine C if it's about electeds versus appointed, and arrange to sit in on one of our future Zoom conferences. And then maybe if we have the time, they can have more opportunity to get into details and we can give them feedback on where we are.
David, I think that's an excellent suggestion, and I would actually suggest that maybe we do that now. And so I'm going to put it on Catherine and also Olivia, if I can, that maybe on our website, we put up the subcommittees and the leads for those subcommittees and the leads county email address, not a phone number, so that's up there. Yeah, Olivia, is there a comment?
Done. Check.
Right. Awesome.
So-
Olivia, you're a rock star. David,
So then we would just refer people to our website then and say you can find the corresponding committee and chair on that particular topic, and you can pursue it directly with the subcommittee. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, great. And so we're going to go to Jane. Jane, you keep confusing me because it doesn't say Jane Fuller. It says LaDrew Fuller, which I keep wanting to call you LaDrew. So Jane,
Sorry.
please take it.
It's my husband and he always
I
gets
know.
called Fuller, which I love. Anyway, yeah, so just on that point, I think it's a great suggestion by David. Are you guys going to be doing a little PowerPoint at the beginning for your presentation, Kevin? Is that the idea when you're introducing?
Yeah, there'll be some sort of a deck. We haven't finalized what that will be, but I think visuals will be good in this.
Yeah.
But literally like 3 slides. We do not want death by PowerPoint.
No. Actually, well, the only thought I had was as a visual, if you have like 3 slides or something like that, if you had a slide then that just showed the subcommittees and had the web link or whatever to the place on the county site, something like that. But then, people could get a visual, oh, there are these subcommittees and those are the names of them, and then explain how, I don't know.
I think that's
No?
Yeah. Okay. I had Dick next.
I was just going to say that I feel strongly. I mean, I thought from the beginning, the point of this was for us to get input from the public about what they think is important and what they'd like to see. And that's where I'd like the focus to be. And I regularly attend live before the pandemic and now mostly virtual 3 public agency meetings, and they all have a 3-minute limit. And I think 3 minutes is plenty for almost everybody. If there are fewer people there, a small number, I think it's fine to go to 5. But if what you have to say is going to take more than 5 minutes, you should put it in writing.
I fully agree, Dick, for the same reason. I've experienced too many meetings. What I will say, my intention is to keep it at 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Period. And if there's fewer people, if a few people go over, we will have a little more flexibility before cutting them off. But we want to make sure, the biggest thing is we want to make sure that everybody who wants to share their opinion or their thoughts with us has the opportunity to do so. And the other thing I will say is if we need to have additional town halls, we will schedule them. Because to Dick's point, the biggest thing we need to do is listen to the citizens of San Juan County regarding this focus. Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I totally concur with many, particularly with what Dick just said. 3 minutes is really a long time to make a point. If you go into more than that, it becomes more of a detailed information that could be lost. So it's probably preferred to be in a document somehow. As far as exchanging back and forth, my experience has been leading school board meetings and other meetings in Olympia when I was in that world. You get to a point where it becomes very sticky because you don't want to say something that whoever's in the meeting, maybe the press or others, that you did not want to say as a response. You might as well just listen to the input and think it through as a board, because then as a board, you are the one making decision as a board, not as an individual. So if an individual responds in a manner that might not be correct, it'll be hard to overcome that particular statement. So I suggest is to listen, take everything in, and then come back to the speaker maybe at a later time with a response. Thank you.
David, you've already gone. Does anybody else have a comment at this point? Patty, you did?
No, but Liz has had her hand up and Olivia's got there. So there are.
Yeah, I did not see Liz. So we'll go to Liz and then Olivia.
So I'm completely open to keeping it to 3 minutes. I don't have an argument with that at all. What I was wondering from those of you who have done so many of these types of meeting is what, if anything, have you seen is the most effective way of having it be conversation, not conversational, but invitational? That's what I'm going for, is that relational and invitational versus that sense of a monologue to a kind of deadpan wall.
I will say that something I learned very early in my time on the county commission before we were even a council, and I learned it from Rhea Miller, was that we pay attention. And it's even more important when you're digital. We said this earlier, that those of us who are on computers where your camera's in the center, it's really important. When you're on a tablet or something, your camera's on the side, so it looks like you're like this the entire time. If people are taking the time to present to us, we need to be engaged, not working on email, not looking the other way, but really engaged. So that's the first thing I would say. The other thing is that it will be my job in chairing the meeting to make sure that people feel invited to speak, that they feel that we're listening to them. While we don't want to get into a back and forth, there can be, some questions or issues that come up, and we can try and field those. And then the other thing, like I said, is if somebody's, 3 minutes and 30 seconds, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's when they start to go to, 4 or 5 minutes or something is when we actually need to cut them off, and you do that very politely. Those would be my suggestions. I don't know if others have any points on that. Okay, I'm going to go to, that was Liz, to Olivia, and then Anne Marie, and then David Dillendorf.
Thank you. So for the town halls, I would highly suggest that we make it a big deal to go to our website, to have people look at the topics that are being discussed right now within our committees. And that I want to reiterate what other people have said, is that we should spend the time listening rather than trying to be persuasive on certain topics. I think that right now it would be a good idea for us to take a neutral position for what other people in our communities want to share with us, and let them know, like, hey, this is what we think. If you're going to come to the meeting, take a look at our topics. What do you think? There definitely can be, I know that I've been on a lot of meetings where if there's a really strong personality and you want something done, it can just kind of take over a meeting. So if we're going to really hear what other people have to share, maybe there's other topics that we're not focusing on currently, but after the town hall, it might reveal itself where our communities are wanting certain topics to be more focused on. This could be our time to really hear that. That's all I have to share.
Olivia, could you send around to the full commission our website link? And then Janet shared
problem.
this in an email, and thank you, Janet, kind of a JPEG flyer for this. And then, so I think sending those two things around to the full commission will be great so that we can all share them via email and social media.
I think I did that a couple days ago, but I'll do that again.
You did with the image, I believe, but yeah. Okay, so we're going to Anne-Marie and then David.
The only thing I was going to add was that as appropriate, I think during the town hall, we may direct people who have a specific interest into particular committees. You know, that's, Tom, what you're saying sounds like it belongs in the elections committee. They meet on, check out the website.
That is an excellent suggestion, Anne-Marie. Thank you. And also, during the town hall, we don't want each of us chiming in, but if there's something like that that one of you catches and I'm not catching it, please feel free to tell me, you know, hey, Kevin, I'd like to comment on that and throw that in there. Okay, David.
So I strongly encourage you, Kevin, to be tough on the time and entering into a dialogue. I don't think any of us should respond, contrary to what you just said. As soon as you answer somebody, respond to somebody, comment to something, then you open up a back and forth, and then other people are going to want to weigh in, and it just is going to become really messy and time consuming. I think you have to do what I suggested before, and Anne-Marie just suggested, direct them to a subcommittee, and that's where the dialogue takes place. It's going to be, this thing is just going to get, it'll be chaos, and there's going to be people upset because you don't let them talk and all that. You just don't let anybody talk other than the person in their 3 minutes, and we don't respond. As soon as one of us responds, then somebody else is going to want to weigh in.
Trust me, I'm all too familiar with it. It will become chaotic very quick. I will be very kindly diligent with our time. So any other comments on this? Awesome. Okay. So I would like us to.
Kevin, I did have my hand up.
I'm sorry. Liz. Oh, Liz, I'm sorry.
Briefly, Julianne corrected me about who the lawyer is over in the chat. So he is a Port Angeles City Commissioner and an environmental lawyer and a constitutional lawyer who works on Bill of Rights and rights of nature at the local level. So that's a better description of who will be there on Thursday night at that Conversation Cafe.
Awesome. So folks who can participate in that can circle back to us on what is shared there. Jane.
Oh my God.
Sorry, just quickly, Julianne suggested that comments be at the beginning of the meeting, and that she sent that message to everybody in the chat. I disagree, and I was just wanting clarification from you, Kevin, if it'll be a brief presentation on what the CRC is and followed by comments. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, a majority of the citizens in San Juan County have not been as proactive as she has and are not following this. And so I think it is critical that the meeting open with first a discussion of what in the heck the CRC is and what the charter is, and then the highlights of what we're discussing, and then opening it up for public comment. I think that's absolutely critical. There's thousands of people who live here who don't have a clue of what we're doing or why it even matters. And I will very quickly share the story of Napoleon Dynamite, which some of you heard from me. So Napoleon Dynamite was a movie that is a cult classic, and if you haven't seen it, you should. The makers of Napoleon Dynamite spent $214,000 approximately making that entire film. The promoters and producers spent about 25 or 35 million. I can't remember. I don't have my notes in front of me like I did earlier. I think it was 27 million promoting the film. In the first weekend, the film grossed $60 million. The reason I raise this is because they spent a lot of time promoting the film. They spent very little to our money making the film. What's the lesson learned? We need to tell people what we're doing and promote what we're doing if we want input. We can spend all the time we want trying to come up with the perfect recommendations, but if nobody knows about them, not only are we going to get no additional input, they're going to fail at the ballot box. So as important as us structuring this meeting is us telling people the meeting is happening and why it matters. So picture Napoleon Dynamite and get out there and tell people about this meeting, please. Okay. God, that got hands up, really? I wanted to move on. Please, Bill, and then Maureen.
Just very quickly, the previous CRC had public comment first, not last. And that way the time was capped and everybody had the last public gloss in their minds as they proceeded to the meeting. And it was also, I think, a lot kinder to those who attended. They would come and they would express their concerns and then they were free to leave or stay, but they didn't have to hang on till the last dog is hung, which is what's happening now. I think it's hard on the public.
So it is why I've been very strict about that the last 10 minutes is public comment. So in 2 minutes, we're going to be going to public comment no matter what. And that's how it is. So the public doesn't have to hang on. They can show up at 10 till. And we've stated that. We're talking right now about the town halls though. So for the town halls, there has to be a presentation in the beginning. I feel strongly about that. If we want to talk about having public comment at 4 p.m., one of the reasons we structured it for the end of the meeting is there's a lot of people who work during the day and they couldn't be here at 4 p.m. So if we were going to have public comment at the beginning of our meetings, I would then suggest that we need to have it at the beginning and the end, which maybe is something we should do is offer it that way. And I'm totally open for that. Somebody else had hand up. Maureen.
Vote for Pedro.
Vote. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody else knew what I was talking about. Okay. So with that, we're going to public comment. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment? Okay, great. Any new business? You guys are wonderful. It is my wife's birthday and I told her I would be finished early. So I want to end the meeting. I would accept a motion to adjourn. Is it Dick? Are you saying motion to adjourn or are you saying you have a question?
I'm saying what happened to returning to the 2 hours for the regular meetings?
Well, unfortunately, my goal for myself was if we finished closer to 2 hours today, I was going to say we should just do it for the next meeting. I'm happy to do that. I don't like to make commitments and not live up to them. And I'm afraid we're not going to stick to 2 hours. Why don't we try it? Why don't we say the next meeting is going to be 2 hours and I'm going to stop us at 2 hours and let's just see what we accomplish. Are folks okay with that?
Yep.
I love that. Okay. Don't get mad at me when I cut us off at 6.
Thank you, Dick.
Move to adjourn.
It requires us to be disciplined.
Be disciplined. There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Aye and bye.